Good evening. I'm Mary Ray Bragg, a member of the Dubuque League of Women Voters and past president of the League of Women Voters of Iowa. The League is a nonpartisan political organization which encourages informed and active citizen participation in government. Membership is open to any citizen 18 years of age or older. We would like to thank the candidates for Dubuque County Supervisor for their participation in this evening's primary election forum and for their invaluable gift to Dubuque by being candidates for public office. There are two candidates running for each party for County Supervisor in the June 7th primary election, and all will move on to the November 8th general election. The candidates are Republicans Doran Bush and Wayne Kennecker, and Democrats Ann McDonough and Jay Wickham.
Good evening.
And Mr. Bush, we're going to begin the evening with you, and we will ask each one of our candidates now, for opening remarks, to please tell us why you are running for Dubuque County Supervisor.
Thank you. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for having this. We feel that this is an important part of the election process. Why I'm running for county supervisor is in the past few years, I've seen a few mistakes, but just things that I wouldn't have done construction-wise around town, and I feel that we need a little bit more conservative attitude in city government with the next coming years. It's going to be difficult with inflation, and I think that everybody needs to tighten their belt and kind of do a little more than than what's usually required. I have a unique aspect of I have a background in many different fields as far as construction, plumbing, and everything like that. So I feel that I could bring something to the board that would be beneficial as to knowing exactly what it takes to.
Thank you. Mr. Kennecker.
Thank you, and thank you for hosting and inviting me to this candidate forum. In November of 2019, I was elected the mayor of Sageville. The people of Sageville at the time could see that things were not going well and needed to be changed. I worked with the council after being elected and was able to accomplish things that benefited the city as a whole. We did not always agree, but we have civil discussions and work together. In 2021, I was reelected as the mayor with 85% of the vote. For the past 2.5 years, I've been attending Board of Health meetings, school board meetings, and of course, Board of Supervisors meetings. In doing so, I would watch the interaction between the board members. On December 21st of 21, and again on April 27th of 22, the Telegraph Herald shared with us some of the details about the interactions with the Board of Supervisors. People want to be represented by a board that can work together and get things done. I have dealt with conflict, disagreements, both at work and as mayor. I will bring those skills. Thank you.
Ms. McDonough.
Thank you to the League for supporting democracy and hosting this candidate forum. Thank you to the candidates and to you, the citizens, for giving your valuable time to these matters. I'm a Dubuque County Supervisor, Ann McDonough, and I'm excited to stand before the voters and seek re-election. I'm a lawyer, teacher, small business owner, co-founder of a nonprofit, president of the McDonough Charitable Foundation, community leader, and volunteer. In my 3 years as supervisor, I have used all of those skills, and I have worked as your supervisor full-time to lead and serve through the pandemic and continuing now in the recovery. I am also a wife, the mother of 2 sons with accomplished wives, and the grandmother of 2. My own grandmother was raised in Worthington. I was raised in Asbury when it was just 400 people, and I live there now. My husband, Peter Healy, grew up in the county on a small family farm where his dad still lives. Our parents, children, grandchildren, all live in Dubuque County, so I am all in. Our county's future, your future, is tied to my family's future. I am tied to this place, to the people, from the Riverwalk to the Field of Dreams. I look forward to the discussion this evening.
Thank you. Mr. Wickham.
Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you to all the people that are here today, the citizens, to take part of this, and then all of those that are watching on Facebook and other mechanisms that are out there. I've been the most senior person on the Board of Supervisors. Now it's 6 years, a little over 6 years, and I've had 2 terms in which I've been on the ballot, and I've been fortunate that the voters have sent me back to the Board of Supervisors. In short, I bring the experience, I believe I bring the knowledge, and I can get things done. And I got a short list of some of the things that the boards that I've worked on have accomplished, and many of the things that I personally have led. And I'm very proud of those. This is Dubuque County's my home. I was raised in Epworth, grew up in Dubuque, lived in Peosta for about 18, 20 years, and have my wife Renee and 3 grown children now that my youngest just finally graduated from college, so I've got all 3 of them done. But in short, some of those accomplishments and evidence of getting things done for the citizens of Dubuque County, we've lowered the tax levy. For those that live in unincorporated areas, it was a 10% reduction. Those that live within cities, it's over a 15% reduction in the tax levy. Whole dollars, over $10 million that we took less from the individual taxpayers. So good stewards of your money. Second big thing was the 911 system. Very proud that we were able to work with all our communities in the city of Dubuque and get a brand new 911 system done along with the 911 radios to work with that. We established a new West campus that allow us to basically deploy our services more efficiently for the next 20, 30 years and establish many conservation areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll begin with the questions that have been submitted to the League by members of the public. And we will begin with Mr. Kennecker on this one. The Board of Supervisors has never established funding priorities. Do you think a strategic plan is necessary for the board, and what are your funding priorities?
Yeah, I think anytime you're dealing with a, close to a $75 million budget, I think there should be a definite, defined plan and strategy that goes along with that, because so often things will come up and they can be distractions to what that plan is. Now, granted, things can change and you may need to change that plan, but as a whole, you always have a plan to go back to and focus on and follow, so you don't get distracted and pulled from one thing to the other. Of course, roads are a very high priority as far as the county is concerned. But we have to keep in mind that even if a road project, okay, if you have a 10-year, and of course they do have a 5-year and a 10-year secondary road plan, and even if the plan changes, so in other words, if you have to push some of them back, it doesn't mean they fall off the table and get thrown into the garbage can. It simply means that instead of being done, say for instance, the last quarter of the year, they're moved to the first quarter of the next year. So it's a matter of prioritizing and planning and sticking to the plan as best you can, or adjusting the plan as you need to.
Okay, about funding priorities, Ms. McDonough.
Yes, thank you. Earlier in my term, we did pre-pandemic begin some priority, and we had some strategic planning that we were pursuing as a current board. And pandemic, as everyone in this room knows, changed things so dramatically. I think good discussions were held, and we began to kind of set forth what priorities and what strategic purposes the board might work toward. And then obviously that would come to public hearing. I think it's critical that we establish those. Voters tell us those all the time, but I think our current board, speak for myself, continuing the work that we are doing on watershed is critical to the success of water quality for our community, as well as being resilient with the increase in flooding. So I think that's critically important, and I feel strongly that should be continued. Also, public health is a high priority. The pandemic has shown us our weaknesses and our gaps, and the public wants us to be ready to address those. We have many openings right now in our public health department, and getting that reestablished with good leadership going forward is essential. I don't disagree at all about infrastructure. A member of the Board of Supervisors who doesn't pay attention to roads and bridges will not be there long. It's critical. That's job one. But I also think we are needed to give our push and our lift to things like childcare solutions, workforce development, things like equity and inclusivity. We need to speak about those as well.
Thank you. Funding priorities, Mr. Wickham.
Funding priorities. So one of my strengths is probably working on the budget and working with the departments and the public and our partners to make sure that we're spending the dollars the most wisely and efficiently as we can. The good news is the overall fund balances have been very healthy during my term, and economic conditions overall during the last decade have been generally pretty favorable. And so we have put a lot of those tax dollars to work related to priorities. And the old adage is, show me your budget, I'll tell you your priorities. And I think that would speak for itself. And so we spent a tremendous amount of our fund balances related to our roads department, getting those structures done. I think during my term, the boards I've served on, we've completed over 80 structures, over 150 miles of roads. We've also funded many projects, I shouldn't say many, we funded projects related to the Sheriff's Department, as far as getting 10 new patrol cars so that the Sheriff's Department could take those home. And so I know that was an individual priority. As I mentioned earlier, we had funding and some donations for 3 new parks within our conservation system, along with funding a lot of improvements with the park system as well. And so while we may not have a strategic plan, I think it's evidence that the supervisors have responded to the public, and we've worked with our partners both on the public side, other cities and county, other cities, and then on the business side and the community nonprofit side, as evidenced some of our funding during the American Rescue Plans.
Thank you. And Mr. Bush?
Thank you. One of my top priorities would be creating a link between job opportunity and the workforce. We have so many jobs that are available, and we have so many people that are unemployed that I just don't understand the reason why that we don't have, why people aren't taking the work that's available. As far as being good stewards to the people's taxpayer dollars, it's an absolute necessity that we completely spend the taxpayer money wisely and where it's needed the most. Watershed projects are a very big aspect of that. The farmland that we have, make sure we have good water runoff. And I look around the county, and if you drive to Wisconsin, most of the rural roads are paved, and don't understand why Dubuque County hasn't pushed towards that, where most of our county roads are gravel. So I would like to be into pushing towards at least blacktopping some of our rural roads that are heavily traveled.
So that would be part of your strategic plan?
Yes. Strategic plan would be.
Okay. Well, thank you. Our next question has to do with the size of the board. As I'm sure all of you are aware, that varies greatly from state to state. Currently, we have 3 members of the Board of Supervisors for Dubuque County, and all are part-time positions, believe it or not. Should there be 5 members? The position, part-time or full-time, in your opinion? Do you have other thoughts on how to change the face of the Board of Supervisors? And we'll begin this question with Ms. McDonough.
Thank you. Yes, this is actually a question that comes forward to me on a fairly routine basis. Why do we have 3 supervisors? Folks see how awkward it can be when our interaction on a brand-new topic is in public for the first time and an action may be needed. You've seen, I'm going to call us the pandemic board to some extent, right? Something comes forward, what do you do? And it's really rather urgent. So 3 is the provision under the Iowa Code and the Iowa Constitution that the citizens of Dubuque County adopted some time ago, long time ago. It can be changed to 5 by citizen petition, or it can be changed by the supervisors themselves. They can pass a resolution. Ultimately, it will go onto a ballot and the voters will decide. Having 5 would increase the cost to the citizens because there'd be more pay that would be required and infrastructure needs would change as well. So it's been raised to me. I know that it's been a hot topic and then a non-topic kind of as it goes along. But if the citizens had the desire to do that, someone would need to step forward, I think, and at least begin a petition process, because it's not something that I intend to do. In all the priorities that we have, I don't consider it a top priority at all.
Thank you. Mr. Wickham.
Well, I say our math is easy related to counting votes, and so if you went to a 5-person board and Supervisor Potoff's the only one that's currently has 2 years in his term, we'd all win. So I don't think that's a proposal that is going to happen. But in all seriousness, I think there's limitations to a 3-person board. So if I had my magic wand, and there's it available by the citizens by petition and a vote, I think going to a 5-person board would have its advantages. And one of the things that I would propose, if that would occur, is that you lower the county supervisor's salary. And so hypothetically, instead of 3 people at $50,000, you'd have 5 people at $30,000. And you invite citizen politicians or elected officials to participate. And I think that could potentially prove better results. But around the counties in Iowa, they've gone back and forth. Lynn County had 5, now they have 3. And some have 3, now they go 5. So it's one that's been batted around left and right, but those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Mr. Bush, your thought about it?
As far as 3 to 5, I think 3 works pretty decently. But if we pushed it to 5, maybe it would give a little bit more chance for the rural counties or the rural parts of the county to have a little bit more representation. Dubuque's a lot bigger city than Cascade and all the rest of the cities around. So I think that maybe it might allow some of those smaller cities to get some representation in the county boards. That's about what I got.
Mr. Kennecker.
Thank you. So I've had a lot of conversations about this very topic, with people from the county. And one thing that I remind them of is there is the process is already in place if the people of the county feel that that is the right thing to do. I would work with 2 other or 4 other supervisors if that was the case, if that's what the people of Dubuque County wanted. I don't think it should come from a current supervisor or future supervisor or someone within the government system. It's there for the people to decide if they would like to see it 3 or 5. Personally, I think the added expense does not outweigh it. I would potentially think of reducing salary, because obviously if you're reducing the amount of time, perhaps reducing the salary is an option. But in reality, what I hear the most from people is supervisors meet at a public meeting. Okay, you can have a public conversation, you can interact. There isn't anything that happens, or very little. There are some closed sessions, but there's very little that has to happen behind closed doors. With productive conversations, regardless of what the number of supervisors are, the things that need to be done can be done in transparency. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question, and we'll start with Mr. Wickham, is one that's kind of put your thinking cap on, and I like this question. Name one thing you think the Board of Supervisors does well and one thing it does poorly, and how would you improve the thing that it doesn't do well? So, one thing the Board of Supervisors does well, one thing it does poorly, and how would you improve that one thing that you think it does poorly?
Well, let me start off by doing the what does well. And so I think we work well overall as far as departmentally and working with other elected officials within our county government. And I think if you had the number of structures and roads we've done, our road and bridge engineering department does really well. The board supports them with funding and encourages them as far as the people that they need. I think we do a good job in conservation. I think our facility up at Sunnycrest is well run and takes excellent care of the over 100 residents that we have there. Courthouse operations related to the other elected officials, whether to a treasury or recorder, county attorney's office, the auditor's office. The supervisors support them and provide them the funding and listen and make sure that things operate well. So I think that's what we can kind of take credit for. And that's been going on for a long time, in my view, and I think we've encouraged that over our board period. What we do poorly. Well, I think one of the things that we've touched on is with a three-person board, there's not any collaboration or deliberation before the meetings. So that would be against state code. They need those deliberations and discussions need to be in public. So you may not know where your colleagues are until you arrive on game day, and that's challenging. And so, potentially having more strategic planning, having more, ideas that are well vetted in public before we act might help.
Thank you very much. And we'll go now to Mr. Bush.
What the board does well, I think they communicate and work together as a group, good, as a one, I think they do a pretty good job of that. What I would do to change, they need to listen to the community a little bit better and not, they need to understand that they are representatives of the people and that the people should have a voice in what happens in Dubuque County. I think going back to the pandemic, I think there was a lot of mistakes as far as not considering natural immunity, which, it was nationwide that was not considered and not even mentioned in most of it. Just counting cases was not the correct way. But as far as working together, they work together good as a group, and I think that a little bit more communication with the community and listen to the community a little bit better.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kennecker.
Thank you. Certainly one of the things that the Board of Supervisors has done well in the last few years is communicating with the county engineer. Anthony has done a great job. There's a lot of momentum with what's happening as far as county roads. They've come a long ways. So I think that has been definitely a plus for what has happened there. Unfortunately, Anthony will be leaving by the end of August, I believe. But fortunately, even at today's meeting, Anthony did a very nice job of starting that transition and introducing the staff behind him. He's certainly part of it, But he let the supervisors know today that the staff behind him means a lot. So I do think the roads in Dubuque County have come a long ways, roads and bridges. As far as communication, I think what happens a lot of times, even in the little town of Sageville, you get the same people that you're used to having conversations with. And I think it's very important. In today's age, it's easy to reach out to people and get their opinions. You have to establish that working relationship with the people you represent. It's not that hard, whether it's emails, surveys, different things of that nature, because otherwise you get stuck in the rut of talking to the same people. And sometimes those people are special interest groups. You know, you don't think of that at a local level, but if you're talking to that same person, you know what their opinion's going to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McDonough.
Thank you. I agree with Supervisor Wickham quite a bit on this, actually. And I think we do a tremendous job of abiding by the open meetings law. We are extraordinarily careful about when we are meeting and when we are together, so that it is transparent and it is open. We don't do backroom deals, and we are not in the dark. This board works very hard with integrity to make sure that the voters see it all. And I think that sometimes maybe makes reporters and people feel uncomfortable, but that is the case. I think something that we could do better is working toward priorities and strategic plan. This board has not had opportunity, honestly, inside a pandemic to take a moment to say, well, how might you do it differently? That isn't just the way lives have been, where you all are home and I've been home and we're on Zoom. What happens the next day or what the latest test result gives us has to be responded to. And so if we had opportunity, I think, to build structure like we began, I do think citizens would see probably a more professional board. So should you join the board, I would encourage you to do that very thing, to make sure that inside open meetings, you talk about priorities and you talk about communication plans, because there's always room for improvement.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bush, we'll be coming back to you for the first response to the next question, and that is one of your citizens wants to ask you to evaluate the current relationship between Dubuque and the smaller communities in Dubuque County as far as how things are handled by the Board of Supervisors. Mr. Bush?
I think Dubuque seems to overpower most of the communities around the county. They tend to put their will into everything that happens as far as development and everything like that. And I think that more rural industry, I believe Piasta has been developed quite well, but I know I'm from Asbury, and we don't have many employment opportunities in Asbury as far as developing, and I'd like to see Asbury grow a little bit with a little bit of workforce development out there. And I think I would like to work together with the City Council of Asbury to help that along a little bit.
Thank you. Mr. Kennecker?
So over the last 2.5 years that I've been the mayor of Sageville, I've had the opportunity to go to the quarterly mayor meetings, which are a great tool. So it's when I first went, it was basically an opportunity for the individual cities to interact between themselves. But it didn't take long for, and at most of our mayor meetings, there's at least one and sometimes two supervisors at those meetings. And it's very valuable, and it's changed from a city to city communication, talking about their situations, their sewer problems, their different things, to a broader concept of including, the county and how that can help in a lot of situations. Today, sitting at the Board of Supervisors, I was actually zoomed in, but listening to the Board of Supervisors meeting, a lot of the things they're talking about are projects coming from small cities. So there is a tremendous amount of interaction, and I think it has helped those small towns a lot. From Luxembourg's sewer system, Luxembourg's paved road system to Rickardsville's sewer system. These are all part of it. They've all been part of discussions during those meetings and during the supervisors' meetings as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McDonough.
Well, thank you. Honestly, I think Dubuque does a great job staying in their lane, so to speak, as we borrow their facility for this forum. They are partners with the supervisors on many things, like the watershed program. They partner with us on that, and together we share resources and leadership. But I would say to you, Wayne, the mayor's meetings, that was something that I brought. Those had not been occurring for many years, and I asked ECIA when I was elected to please convene those. I was surprised that a mayor of Cascade may not know the mayor of Rickardsville. There's a disconnect, and yet all of the issues are so very similar. So that's something that I think far exceeded anything that, my expectation was just that there'd be opportunity for discussion, but I actually think euchre tournaments and such have come from that. So well done, everyone. But we do focus a great deal, ever more, on the strength of the entire county. But I would also say to you that so has the infrastructure in our county, in the city of Dubuque. Greater Dubuque Development Corporation has a second in command, I'll say, that is he lives in Dyersville, Jason White, and he is very focused on growth in the county. I think everyone knows that the success of Dubuque County is going to come from the vibrancy and the economic engines of those small communities. Thank you, Tom.
Mr. Wickham.
I'm repeating myself from earlier today, but most of you probably weren't tuned in. So I grew up in Epworth and went to Western Dubuque's grade school and high school, and my family lived in Peosta for almost 20 years. So the small towns are a big part of my life and experience in Dubuque County. And so very happy to support those. And one of the things that makes it easy is that as of the last year or so, 75% of the new growth comes from all of our small towns, not from within the city of Dubuque proper. They do fine, but the growth has been outside of the city of Dubuque and all those small towns that we mentioned. And the board has done, I think, a really good job with the mayor's meetings and just, when they have projects coming to us, supporting those. So about every town, I have a list here, has done a joint project with the Board of Supervisors in various capacities. Happy to give you those examples offline. I don't think I have time to go over every one of them. But one of the other key things that we focus with in partnerships, at least I know I have, the support for emergency management and volunteer fire people in those small towns. That ability to call on those volunteers and then make sure that they have the right radio equipment and they have the right equipment through the Tom Hancock Grant Award, which I founded and started in honor of Tom Hancock, my predecessor in this position. We're able to make sure that they have the resources because they're doing all the hard work volunteering.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Kennecker, we'll start with you on our next question, and that is, Dubuque will not make the 50% reduction in greenhouse gas by 2025 that had been hoped for. What can the county do to assist reaching the goal?
I think as far as the environment is concerned, one of the things that we have to look at is sustaining wildlife. Over the years, if we look back, we had some issues, and there's definitely been a lot of things that have already been done. Granted, we can't stop, but I think we need to sit back at least once in a while and look at what we have actually done to sustain some wildlife. We've got more trout streams now in our area than we ever did. We've got more deer. We've got more wildlife. The thing is, we have to set realistic goals as well. We can't move into a different era before we're ready to do it. It doesn't take someone that disrespects or disregards the environment, but it does take some careful planning to get to the right place at the right time, doing the right things. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McDonough?
Well, of course, Dubuque reaching its goals is up to the city of Dubuque and what planning they've done, and they have a variety of plans to do that. Each of the cities, and Dubuque County is blessed with 21 cities, 21, they all have plans that reflect the character of their community. So that the city of Dubuque won't reach their goals, we do partner with them on tremendous programming, the watershed programming, which goes also to soil restoration, and that also can lead directly to carbon sequestration. So in a conversation last weekend with John Norwood, who's a candidate for the Iowa Department of Agriculture. So that is something that we're doing those steps. They hold up Dubuque County work as an example regionally and state that the things that we are doing work toward this. I am not in a situation where we can tell the city of Farley what infrastructure to do or create to take care of their greenhouse emissions. That just isn't how this Board of Supervisors functions. I do know that Dyersville uses solar panels. The idea of sustainable environment, that doesn't end at Dubuque city limits. There are many other partners working on that.
Thank you. Mr. Wickham?
Well, now that you give me a second shot at this might have been the one that I said we have a little challenges on our work to do. So I don't think from Dubuque County's vantage point, we've done as good a job as we could do in reducing our carbon footprint and reducing our use of energy. And so we have some work to do there, in my opinion. We have done some minor things that we've done, I think, that have made some differences, and some have been mentioned. So on our recent new facilities in both Farley and Peosta, we had installed solar panels, and those are going to be making us much more energy efficient and also reduce the individual costs. We did the water and soil, which cover crops, and introducing buffers. I think that's had a small difference, but we need thousands and thousands of more acres of that. And then finally, I would agree with Mayor Kinnecker as far as just habitat and wildlife. I serve on the Conservation Board. I think those are areas that we could continue to invest in and make a difference.
Thank you. Mr. Bush?
I think that we could do a lot more for greenhouse emission by pushing solar panels more and making them more affordable for homeowners. I had a quote to put solar panels on my home at one time, and this was several years ago. And I got a quote back for $50,000 to put solar panels on my home to create the same energy that my house uses. And that, to me, is, and then I asked the person that gave me that quote, what is the life expectancy of those solar panels? And he told me 15 years. So in 15 years, those solar panels at $100 a month, roughly, our electric bill was running. Those solar panels were not going to pay for themselves, and it was unsustainable to even look at doing that. So I would probably push towards finding ways to make solar more efficient or more affordable to the common homeowner around the community.
Thank you. All right. Our next question has to do with eminent domain. It says, in the past, eminent domain was used only for public projects like highways, but recently we've started seeing that private corporations are requesting the use of eminent domain in something, the transmission line from Wisconsin and carbon sequestration too, the pipelines that are going across to Iowa. So that it's apparent that eminent domain is going to be coming before the county supervisors at some point. When this person wants to know, when these projects reach Dubuque County, how will you vote? So a broader question is, how do you regard eminent domain? And we will start with Ms. McDonough.
Eminent domain has not come before this Board of Supervisors, and I don't see it on the horizon. I don't think that, I certainly wouldn't favor using eminent domain for a private enterprise. That seems out of whack with what priorities would be. And I'm sure, should such a request come, that we would be setting many, many public hearings so that there's opportunity for folks to be aware. So the pipeline that you speak of for carbon sequestration is not, that is not what I'm talking about for carbon sequestration. That pipeline is not headed to Dubuque County, as far as I know. I don't even know that it's going to get lifted inside the state of Iowa. So no, I don't believe we are asked this. Occasionally by Farm Bureau, would we use eminent domain? And that is not something that I would consider, I guess. I'd like to circle back to the sustainable environment and just assure voters and citizens to know that the jail is geothermal. The pavers at our Dubuque County West campus are permeable pavers. So when we have opportunity to look at green energy, this board and a previous board has been doing that. So there's more work to do. The board has worked on composting at the landfill. That would be Supervisor Potoff, who serves on that board. So I don't think that we're missing opportunities. Thank you.
Mr. Wickham, about eminent domain.
Eminent domain. So yes, we haven't really faced that in my 6-year term. And so in short, I would not be favorable to eminent domain with any local county project. And so I know the state occasionally uses that for larger highway programs, and certainly the federal government potentially would have that, and utility boards may have that authority. I wouldn't be a big fan of it. I'm stingent on landowner rights, and I think if you look at our zoning decisions, you'll see that I'm very favorable to landowners, property owners, related to the use of their property, and have voted that way many, many times. And so I also do say, don't fall in love with the view you don't own. Because your neighbor might have different plans for that, as long as it's done safely and not harm to the community. And so that would be my big area, just eminent domain related to the utilities. We don't really have that jurisdiction, but I'm not a big fan of taking away landowners, particularly in rural areas, for either prospective utilities that are proposed around Iowa, but it doesn't really come up very often.
Mr. Bush.
I believe a landowner's land is his to do as he sees fit. Small farms are disappearing at a alarming rate, as far as, in my opinion. Everybody is conglomerating and renting their land, and I would like to see more, and it's turning it into a monopoly as far as I'm concerned. Taking the wealth from a landowner to develop as far as utilities and stuff like that, as long as the land is returned and there's a easement put on it, I don't favor just saying that you no longer own this, unless that's what the owner wants and gets compensated fairly for the for the transfer of the property.
Thank you. Mr. Kinnicker.
So, as far as eminent domain, it's usually thought of as an ugly situation, but I think we all have to think about what that means and what it can mean for people, not only us that are sitting here, but other people as well. So, as we heard, the County Board of Supervisors has not been faced with this yet. They don't believe that it's going to happen anytime soon. So therefore, to me, that's an issue that would be, again, handle it when it came up and deal with the facts that are there. I too have to circle around a little bit on the carbon footprint and things of that nature. So I've had solar panels on my barn since 2013. I've had geothermal heat. My electricity bill is very, very low because of the two things that I have done. And again, why did I do those? To help the environment. So it's not that I don't believe in helping the environment as much as we can. It's just that I don't believe we should set goals that push us to do things in an inefficient manner.
Thank you. Our next question is comments that Farley and Cascade have requested American Rescue Plan Act funds for their libraries. How can and should they serve all residents of Dubuque County? Mr. Wickham?
Excellent question. We had this in session today. So the good thing I think that we have done is that we've asked the community, both private nonprofits and then local government, how should we use American Rescue Funds? And that was a conscious choice of the board. We received almost $20 million. City of Dubuque, I believe, has received about $28 million, but has chosen a different path. So we opened ourselves up to this. And so we have Farley and Cascade to the libraries saying, hey, help us build new libraries. And one of the positions I have stated is that I'm supportive of generally those projects, but the accessibility needs to be open to the public, and certainly the ability to check in and out material needs to be open to the public. So how we do that, we need to work out those individual details. And I'm confident we do it. Having public access to libraries is not a new concept. So I'm very, very confident we'll overcome those if the Farley and the Cascade communities are interested in that individual funding. There is another component of that that's challenging, is that the funding's not equal amongst all the cities and amongst all the libraries. So Asbury did their library almost probably by themselves. And here's some other towns that are going to get federal funds. And so different time, different place, not necessarily a different priority. We didn't have the funds a series of years ago, but we do have the funds now, and we've asked the community how to use them, and they've submitted those.
Thank you. Mr. Bush, your thoughts?
I believe that developing the knowledge of our youth is an utmost importance. And if that means building libraries, yes. Was the American Rescue Funds purposed for that? That's whatever I would question. I know that a lot of cities have used those funds for different projects, but what other people do is not the right thing to do. Would I support a library, and should we do it with funds that we have? Sure. We need to develop the knowledge of our youth and bring up a future workforce that's informed and supported in their own opinions and goals.
Thank you. Mr. Kennecker?
Could you restate that question, please?
Farley and Cascade have requested American Rescue Plan Act funds for their libraries. How can and should they serve all residents of Dubuque County?
The main question I see there is, should all members be able to use the libraries? And my answer to that is straightforward by saying these are federal funds that are being applied for, and therefore everyone should have access to those libraries if in fact they are being supplemented with federal funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McDonough?
So I'm going to begin my answer with a caveat, because this is an issue that is still being debated at the Board of Supervisors level, and we form a quorum when we have conversation about issues that are before the board. And so I am not going to pursue that avenue about Cascade and Farley and what might be. The funding of the library service is pursuant to Iowa code. Some time ago, the citizens of Dubuque County chose a library service, a decision that has still, it's probably antiquated, and it comes on down now to who can use what service. In fact, the city of Sageville does not pay a participation tax per capita, and the Sageville citizens cannot check out materials from any library in the county right now. That is the nature of decision being made at the local level. So my own memories are, I'm one of 12 children. My goodness, the bookmobile from the Dubuque County system was a godsend in the summer. I don't know how my mother kept track of all those books she let us check out when the Dubuque County bookmobile rolled up. So strong supporter of libraries, and I think this board will get to the right decision.
Thank you. Our next question is, under what conditions would you allow ATV and UTV access to Heritage Trail? And we'll start with Mr. Bush.
I believe that we need to develop the trails for UTVs. They're a popular item right now. As far as Heritage Trail, I believe there's too much pedestrian and two-wheel bicycle traffic on that to allow them to intermix with the motor-powered vehicles. But I do believe that Dubuque County can do so much better than what is happening right now for the UTVs. I think they are a future that we could use. They are a lot more fuel efficient than starting my pickup and going up to Casey's. I think that we need to develop a UTV trails around Dubuque County, but we do not need to allow them on Heritage Trail.
Thank you. Mr. Kennecker.
In 2018, I was visiting with my father-in-law about this very subject. He was an avid walker on Heritage Trail and loved the trail very much. He got to the point where he couldn't enjoy the trail anymore because he couldn't walk on it, he couldn't bike on it, and there was no other mechanism for that to happen. So I met with Brian Preston and talked about a potential event. And that event was a one-time, and it was going to be by reservation, to be able to ride with someone that had an ATV or a side-by-side. And so we had a very good conversation about it. And, you know, he mentioned that the trail traffic was heavy between Heritage Pond and Durango. So the solution was possibly to do it from Durango to Dyersville, where it's not so busy. Do it on a Sunday between 6 o'clock or between noon and 6 o'clock, just to see how many people it would draw, how much it would help those people that could not enjoy Heritage Trail because of their physical challenges or something of that nature. So unfortunately, it kind of got brushed off, and I finally took it to the Conservation Board in a formal application. It was flat out denied. What would I do? I would let some people ride every Sunday afternoon on a portion of the trail. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McDonough.
Heritage Trail is a beautiful natural gift to the county, and it can be a jewel of the county, and it can bring so much tourism and amenities that so many people seek. And I don't disagree that some folks who ride ATV, UTVs can be recruited here too for all the natural beauty. I would not favor ever access by the public to use Heritage Trail for this purpose. I do know that Brian Preston, our conservation director, has what you requested I think, Wayne, is something that he has done. I'll defer to Supervisor Wickham on that, but I believe he has done those kinds of rides in terms of accommodating individuals with circumstances. And Jay, you may know more, but the trail is being used wonderfully right now, and I don't think it's wide enough to mix that kind of traffic. And I'll just be quiet so you can go forward with more detail.
Mr. Wickham?
Thank you. So I have been a supporter of the ATV and UTV use on county roads. I made this statement today. I'm not an ATV, UTV rider or advocate, but as an elected official, I felt they deserved access like many of the other uses, whether you're walking, riding, bike, motorcycle, so on and so forth. And we are in discussions now related to extending the hours of operation and also extending some of the road uses. There's about 16 or 18 roads that are currently banned from the original ordinance. The ordinance today as written, and if it is extended with the sunset clause that's going to happen at the end of June, the ordinance as it is today bans or prohibits use on the Heritage Trail. And I am in favor of banning ATV, UTV use on the Heritage Trail. So no allowance for those types of vehicles, those units on the Heritage Trail.
Thank you. The next question kind of echoes back to an earlier question that we were talking about the makeup of the board and how it represents the county. This one asks, should the supervisors be representing specific parts of the county, and why or why not? And we will start this with Mr. Kinneker.
I do not believe there should be districts as far as representation by county supervisors. I think it limits the ability. I mean, we've seen in the past that there's times when people will run unopposed and there's not that many people and we're only trying to fill 3 seats. To make that a specific district and limit that, I think, is a mistake.
Thank you. Ms. McDonough.
There's the provision in the Iowa Code, citizens can do this. You can bring forth a petition. And the state legislature, I think every year I've been elected in this term, they've introduced a bill. I've been told by Representative Lundgren that it isn't with regard to Dubuque County a problem or an issue, but sometimes a county gets itself sidewise with maybe somebody who represents them at the state, and then you end up with a bill pending at the State House that would make districts that don't necessarily, counties that don't want districts, you may end up with them anyway. So it's, I think it's best, and the Iowa Constitution has home rule where counties get to decide this. You, citizens, get to decide these things. And if there's interest in that, I would be interested in hearing. That question has never come to me. The 3-5 has, but not being represented by a specific district. There's some things that Dubuque County just does really well. Fire EMS, as discussed by Supervisor Wickham, is an exceptional example. We set a standard that is gold for the state and how you work together, county, city, and I think that drawing distinctions about who represents whom maybe would even imperil that. I don't know. I just think there's some things we do quite well right now.
Thank you. Mr. Wickham.
Well, I tried to make light and a joke out of the 3 to 5 supervisors, and I think that fell flat, so I'll answer this one just straight up. Right now, every citizen gets, 3 supervisors that they vote for, and that's a strong representation. If you go to districts, if you have only 3, now you're down to 1 vote. So I would think if I was a citizen, I'd rather have, hey, I vote for you, 3 versus 1. So I would agree with Mayor Kinneker on that I believe that districts just aren't the solution that we have here. Another thing to understand if you look back kind of the history, is we've had a good balance of rural representation and to some degree city representation, city of Dubuque. Now, city of Dubuque has a very strong council and is a very strong organized government body, but Supervisor Baker was from the city of Dubuque. In the urban area, we've got supervisors that are from Asbury, and my predecessors were from rural unincorporated areas and in farm country. So I think we've had a good mix over the years, and doesn't seem any reason to change that.
Thank you. Mr. Bush.
I think Dubuque County is a strong community, and we're a tight group, we're a tight community. So I believe that as far as having district representation, I agree with Jay and Wayne that it would kind of limit your voting aspects towards who you know, because there's so many people that believe that for a strong government that there should be a mixture of different philosophies. And I think that limiting the candidacy for certain areas would not be the answer.
Thank you. We're going to have time for one more question before we give you an opportunity to talk about and then your final remarks. But this question has to do with the American Rescue Plan Act again. And it asks if funding should be used for the Field of Dreams project. Is it a private corporation? Should we be using that money for that? And just your thoughts on it, starting with Ms. McDonough.
The Field of Dreams ARPA award that was given by Dubuque County was given to a nonprofit, not a for-profit. So that needs to be corrected. It is a gift given to a nonprofit. It fully, totally complies and meets the highest standard of the Biden administration rescue plan, which is to make sure that you use funding to support tourism. That is directly stated in the documents. The thing that other folks may not know is that in my meetings with the governor and my meetings with the economic development, the funding that has been given by the state of Iowa to the Field of Dreams is premised upon the fact that some of the county ARPA funding would be used. The governor asked specifically, as did Debbie Durham, that is the nature of how deals happen. And I was proud of my vote. And the only thing I wish is that the Cardinals were playing in just a few weeks and instead of the Cincinnati Reds.
Thank you. And Mr. Wickham.
Definitely a fair question, because I've made those comments myself related to you've got kind of big business, or if you got people that are financially successful and have, large financial means, does the government need to come in and help? It's something that happens throughout the United States. So if you look at baseball stadiums in major leagues and in some of the bigger cities, they are funded by local government, right or wrong. So here's where I think it makes sense. I think it makes sense is because you're going to get a return on your investment. So one in Field of Dreams, you've got nearly $100 million in private money that's going into the other developments of the hotels, the fields, the practice facilities, indoors, those types of things. And then we're going to be partnering with the public sector. So the state of Iowa already issued over $11 million for sewer and water, and Dubuque County Supervisors has agreed to offer $5 million in funding for the stadium along with other local governments. In short, the payback comes directly from property tax assessment. So that $100 million is going to be assessed. And then local option sales tax, which we get for our roads as well. So initial calculations, that will be minimum $500,000 a year, going on to $750,000 a year in both those categories. So you're going to get a return on your investment pretty quick. In addition to that, the downstream investments for hotels and tourism and people going to little towns will quickly make this a return on investment and a wise move.
Mr. Bush, your thoughts.
I believe that there's a lot of investment in the Field of Dreams already, where I would be very leery about putting taxpayer funds into it unless it was developing utilities for the different necessities of the facility. The ball players that are invested, the private investments, I think there's a reason why we don't have a professional team in Dubuque, and that's because I don't believe that the Dubuque taxpayers want to build a stadium for a professional team to come here. If that is something that needs to come up on a ballot and be voted for.
Mr. Kennecker, your thoughts?
Couple of things. So the first part of this for me is the project itself. There seems to be some benefits in the project. But in the second part of this, it's almost back, back to the eminent domain question. How about the people that are going to live next to this facility? They might not want to live there. They might not want this in their neighborhood. So we have to think about those things. Has there been any input from these folks? Secondly, the $5 million, that's over 25% of the American Rescue Plan money that was allocated to Dubuque County. That's a lot of it, 25%, over 25%. You know, what group of people had the opportunity to share their thoughts on that? Of course, they had the opportunity because we can all speak at public meetings. But the thing is, there's a lot of folks, people like you and I, out there that are not in favor of spending $5 million worth of tax money on this particular project. True, there are some potential benefits as far as return on investment, but we've also seen some projects that have failed. Nobody likes to see those projects fail, whatever they are. There's no sense mentioning them, but we've seen them fail. And what happens then? Where's the return on investment then? What happens? It just goes away. Something to think about. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, now we're at the point in our program where we'll give each one of you an opportunity to talk about a subject that perhaps hasn't been addressed that you would like to express your thoughts on, or to discuss something that we've talked about that you would like to talk about a little bit more. And so we'll, we would start with Mr. Wickham, okay?
Same amount of time?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And these are closing remarks as well?
No?
No, just anything we want to talk about.
Yes.
Oh, wow, great. For me, it would be the hope and the positivity that I see at the county in a lot of different areas. So we have a lot of strengths that we've been playing on and a lot of successes that the community can take part of, and I believe Field of Dreams would be one of those. It's not very often that an outside entity comes in and says, hey, they said this before we committed to the stadium. We're going to spend $80 million. And so I think that's a positive. The other positives we're seeing is our development around the Highway 20 corridor and those smaller towns now growing up. And so certainly Asbury's been on that trail for a long time, and Peosta and Epworth, and Farley and Dyersville, and certainly successes in the north and south related to Cascade and some of the smaller towns up north. And so we're in a good position. What that means from the county, it makes our job a little bit easier because tax assessments and generally tax collections overall during my term have been up. So it allows us to prioritize and invest in the things that we've all talked about. And so those are really good news. The other piece to mention, I'll reinforce this. We have, at least during my term, I've been very focused on reducing that tax levy. And so last year was the first and only year, but at least was one, where we actually lowered the amount of tax that we've collected. The state of Iowa helped us a little bit with the mental health tax levy as well, but we actually lowered that for the first time. Otherwise, it was just a slowdown in the reduction.
Thank you. Mr. Bush.
I would like to visit back on the UTV. I really like Wayne's idea of planned events on the Heritage Trail, if that ever happens, as long as there's not going to be any destruction or any destruction of the trail and the facilities. As far as the Field of Dreams, I I believe that there's enough privately funded money there that I would not support putting taxpayer funds into it. And also, like Wayne said, the community needs to have a say in what happens there too. It is a Dyersville. It is a Dyersville thing, so I would like to see the city of Dyersville allow it to happen. Eminent domain, homeowners' land is their land, and I just think that we don't have the right to take it from somebody that privately owns something. So,
Mr. Kennecker, your thoughts?
So one thing I think is important is being upfront, bold, and sharing the whole truth. And by that, I got to go back to the tax part of this tax levy. It is a fact. The tax levy has been lowered for at least the past 6 years. But at the end of the year, there's two portions that play into the taxes, the tax levy and the assessment rates. If we truly want to reflect and call it a tax cut, we have to make it a tax cut. So just for instance, in the last 4 years, okay, the taxes I paid, the property taxes I paid, okay, went up 4.1%, then they went up 2.8%, then they went up 1.4%, and then 1.42%. So I get it, and I respect it. They tried to reduce, or they call it a tax cut, but unfortunately, it was a matter of preventing the taxes from going up higher. It did not lower my tax liability in any one of those given years. And I think we have to be upfront and honest with people. There are some numbers you can look at that make that look pretty attractive. The tax levy rate in 2017 was $10. It's now $9.
Thank you. And now it is time for our wrap-up.
Actually, I
comment.
have my opportunity, if I might.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. McDonough.
Yes,
Please
thank
go
you.
ahead.
Thank you. I wanted to just visit with folks about brain health and mental health services. That was the number one question I was asked 4 years ago, and I want to report back to the citizens that I know that the availability of services is incredibly low, but the work that the Board of Supervisors have done, that I have led, has been deep and as swift as it possibly can be. In my term, we have hired critical, expert, professional individuals in Dubuque County to lead the Dubuque County Disabilities and Mental Health Services. The CEO of the region lives in Dubuque. We have a brand-new director of brain health services here. We dispersed into this community $1.3 million in brain health funds within the last 15 months. That is a big, large wake. If you look behind you, you will see that brain health work has been aggressively funded by this Board of Supervisors. I sit on a regional governing board that meets monthly. I am on that regional governing board's finance department. I am the Children's Brain Health Regional Liaison to that board. I work endlessly on this. This is a top issue for our county citizens, and I don't think that this board, and I join with Supervisor Wickham, we have not neglected this issue at all. We are working as rapidly as we can with the resources that we have.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll be able to go to the wrap-up comments. And because we started with Mr. Bush, opened it, we will go to the other end of the panel and we will begin our wrap-up, 2-minute wrap-up with Mr. Wickham.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. And I would like to say to all the citizens of Dubuque County, thank you for your support. Thank you for your patience during the pandemic. And it has been my pleasure to serve the last over 6 years as a Board of Supervisor. And I have done my best. I have made mistakes. The pandemic was extremely challenging for all of us and was an area that was unknown. But I'm very proud of what we've accomplished and very excited for the future related to Dubuque County. We have a lot of, as I mentioned before, a lot of strengths, a lot of positive things that are happening. Now, it's not without challenges and headwinds. So costs are escalating, inflation. We're certainly concerned about a slowdown in the economy, and nobody likes to hear those types of things. We also have inequities within our county, and we've been trying to address some of those. Just in my note, we've funded just recently 3 different food banks throughout the county. We funded urban projects as well, from Steeple Square to the Dream Center to the Holy Ghost Child Care Center down on Central just recently. And so we're trying to address the needs of the county. And what I can say is I'll do those as honestly and as with all the experience that I bring. And hopefully at the end of the day, you'll find those results positive. So I appreciate your vote and look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you. Ms. McDonough?
Every day, I work on local solutions to make our tomorrow better. On behalf of the Board of Supervisors and you, I actively serve on 14 boards, both local and regional. In addition, I continue to attend the Homeless Coalition meetings, Project Hope, which is children and adult mental health meetings, Sunnycrest Advisory Committee, the Dubuque Wellness Coalition, and the Food Policy Council. I work directly with refugees through VIATS and with homeless individuals through the Red Basket Project. I show up in our communities at veterans lunches, senior meals in Dyersville, and farmers markets in Epworth and Cascade. And I shop out in the county for coffee, groceries, gifts, and clothing. I have frequent contact with mayors and am responsible for ECIA re-engaging the quarterly mayors meetings that had stopped for many years. I believe the strength of all is best achieved through vibrancy and growth in all our 21 cities throughout the county. On the policy level, I am guided by common sense and transparency. When there are no emergencies, I think government should be slow to grow, steady and reliable. I am dedicated to the work of clean water, to access to critical mental health services. I am focused on public health, child care solutions, and continued workforce creation. I think it is important to build diverse, inclusive, and equitable communities. We live in a challenging time with worries that are local, national, and global. Now more than ever, please stay focused on local solutions. I ask for your support and would be honored to earn your vote. Thank you to the League for the discussion this evening.
Thank you. And Mr. Kennecker?
Again, thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum and for inviting me. A little bit more about me. I've lived in Dubuque County for 59 years. I married my wife, Lori, 38 years ago, and we have 3 adult sons. After graduating from Hempstead, I went to Loras in pre-engineering. During that time, I worked for Interstate Power Company as a driver helper to replace street lights and respond to power outages. When I left Loras, I went to a VOTEC school in Northwest Iowa in a power line program. I returned to Interstate Power Company in 1986 and spent the next 12 years working as a lineman. During those 12 years, I completed a BA in business at the University of Dubuque. I was also elected as the vice president of Local 263 of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. I understand the benefits of a fair bilateral agreement and participated in negotiations several times. In the late 1990s, my utility career shifted, and I designed projects before taking several management roles. Today, I'm a project manager. I coordinate large storm events like the derecho of 2020 and other storms across Iowa and southern Minnesota. Over the years, I have learned it is critical to have the right people in the right place and a solid plan to follow. It does no good to throw people or dollars at a problem without talking to the people closest to the problem. I will use the experience that I have gained over the years and the knowledge that I have built attending the Board of Supervisors meetings for the last 2.5 years to serve the people of Dubuque County. I will reach out to the people that know most about the issues and others who are willing to voice their opinions. I would appreciate your support up to the election and beyond. Thank you.
Mr. Bush.
I want to thank the League of Women Voters for allowing us to present ourselves to the public. Growing up on the north end of Dubuque, I grew up in a blue-collar area. I went to work at the age of 12 and pulling weeds for a landscaper. And from that point on, I learned that you do to get what you want. You have to earn it. And as far as I've been a business owner in Dubuque, I've owned 2 companies. And I learned in that that working with people is the most important. Working with the public, you have to listen to the will of the people. You have to allow them to voice their opinions and views, and you have to compromise with even sometimes your values for the better of the community. I think that the people of Dubuque County deserve a voice, and I would like to be that voice for them. My door is always opened. I will always listen, and I will always speak I will always give my opinion and with my knowledge of what it takes to get a project done. I would appreciate everybody's vote and support, and I will work hard for the Dubuque County.
Thank you. Well, that wraps us up for this part of our evening, and sincere thanks to our candidates for taking the initiative to become active in your communities in this way and taking all the time and effort. We appreciate it very much. Now, this forum may be seen again excuse me, on City Channel Dubuque, on Cable Channel 8, or Digital 117.2. It is being streamed live on the City Facebook page and website. Thank you to City Cable Channel for providing this service to our county's voters. We also want to thank those watching and those of you who submitted these great questions that we used this evening. Residents of Dubuque County, hear ye, remember to vote on June 7th. This closes the first portion of tonight's forum. We'll have a short break and resume at 8 o'clock with candidates for county attorney, treasurer, and recorder. Thank you so much.